How's everyone doing? Thanks for coming out on this, snowy Friday the 13th. How spooky. Honestly, when Brandon asked me to come and do this, I'm like, but it's Friday the 13th. That seems a little spooky. But, okay, I'll do it. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the Creative Morning crew for asking me to do this. It's I felt very humbled that I was asked to do this. So thank you. And hi, my name is Carmen. I'm essentially like an urbanist, a designer, an engager, a geographer. So I'm kind of a mishmash of a background. But what I'd like to share with you today is a little bit of my story and what I think about make, how I go about making things, and what I think making is kind of deep down in my soul. And when I was thinking about making this lecture, I was thinking about like, who am I as a maker? What do I have to offer? What do I want to do differently? What do I not? And it was really an exploration. So I want to start off with the City of Edmonton. This is a photograph done by my friend Randy Armstrong. And it was funny because I was thinking about what does make mean in the city right now. And as we all know, I would say that kind of make and made is a fairly popular word in Edmonton right now. whether it's make something Edmonton, whether it's made, which is media architecture and design Edmonton, whether it's made in Edmonton, there's a few things going on. And I'm sure there's others that I don't know as well. But ultimately, maybe these words are so hot right now because we're kind of a city that's on the brink of being an urban center, and I think that that's something really interesting to explore. What does make mean to us? What does make mean to the city? There's kind of that je ne sais quoi in the air that we're kind of all navigating right now, living here, which I think is really interesting, even being in startup. The fact that this kind of, facility exists, that you can come and hold a workshop here, you can rent a space, there's that making energy in the air that I think that's really cool. So initially, I'm going to talk about what I initially wanted you guys to do. So initially, I was thinking about something that we could all collaboratively make together as we walked in. And this is done by a company called Droog Design out of Holland, and it's called the Do Make chair. And it's essentially, you got this metal box and you have a sledgehammer, and then you bang it to make a chair, and you make the chair, with whoever is making it. And it was funny because I literally had spoken to a couple of friends about welders in the city because I literally wanted to do this. And then I ran it past Brandon, and he was like, well, there's people working the space. Maybe it wouldn't be as good of an idea. So maybe at a later date, we'll have to do this all together, because I think it could be really fun. But instead, I did a couple of questions, or put a couple of questions up on the wall, and had some Post-its. And the questions that I asked were what is your favorite thing that you've made, and what would you like to make but you haven't made yet? And I think it's really interesting to kind of just create that, question in all of our minds, because sometimes you look back at maybe the things that you've made, and maybe it was your favorite dinner last week that you made, or maybe it was something I think I saw someone wrote their bed, which that's really amazing. I've never made a bed, and I'm a furniture designer, so kudos to you, whoever wrote that. Or maybe there's those things that you haven't even realized that you want to make, that you could make. So yeah, because I'd like to ask a question. Who has ever made something in the room? Raise your hand. because every single one of you should be raising your hand because it's a very human thing to do. But let's take a step back. What is make anyways? So I started kind of deconstructing and, of course, went to the good old dictionary and I was like, what is make? What is it? And, one thing that kind of continuously came up was making is the act of creating something. And that something could be like really anything. So, just to kind of go explore a little bit more of what the dictionary told me is make is a verb. So it can be a form, something by putting parts together, combining substances, construct, create, cause something to exist or to come about, bring about, or compel someone to do something or succeed in something. And it's funny because then there's like the noun of make, which is like, the make of a car or something, which we don't need to talk about that. I want to talk about the verb. Yeah, so I guess what I'm going to share with you now is maybe some of the things that I've made. So these are log bowls. And I have a furniture company with 3 other amazing women. We have a company called the Loyal Loot Collective. And, it's a really interesting process of how we make this because it's fairly time-staking. So what we do is we go out and we're friends with a couple of the tree removal peeps in the city, and we essentially harvest wood that's being taken down for infrastructure for some sort of manner or another. And we take this wood, we bring it to our lather's shed, and it gets dried there. So usually when you kind of take down a tree, it's at about 28% humidity, and you need to get it down to about 18 so that it doesn't crack. But the thing that's really interesting, additional note, is that we're really lucky that we're making these in Alberta, because if we were making them somewhere like really humid and tropical, they would crack everywhere they went. Because it's so hilariously dry here, which we all know right now, because who's putting coconut oil on their body continuously right now? I am. So it's a great place to make log bowls. Our lather cuts them into blanks, and then they get dried on a shelf again, just making sure that they're all ready to go. He lathes them for us. And just to point out, our lather is this like late 70-year-old man. He used to be a surgeon, and he like loves lathing. And and the thing is, because he like has like the steadiest, most like meticulous handwork known to mankind, like he's like a magician. We've been working with him for so long. He's kind of like almost like an uncle or something. So then he lays them for us, and then we take the log bowls and we take them to our studio, and then we paint them. And there's been years when we've made them where it's like literally been the 4 of us in a circle, like painting log bowls on the floor, and then there's like we've had interns and like what have you, and then so we paint them, varnish them, sand them, and then we essentially send them off. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that afterwards. But this is what they end up being like. So it's kind of that mixture of a really bright color with wood grain or bark or what have you. One of the other things that I guess I make is workshops or like civic engagement forums and what have you. So actually the last time I was up here, and I see some of you out there, we were doing this atelier design workshop, and basically the whole idea of the workshop is really about like collaborative knowledge base, and it's about creating a space for people to talk, to like essentially to talk, but also to like explore ideas, which I think can be so powerful. And that's also what I think that's so powerful about kind of like civic engagement and forums and that sort of thing, where it's like it allows for people to have a voice. It allows for people to share that voice, and it allows for people to kind of bounce ideas off of, because there's so many things I think in our everyday life that we don't really have the opportunity to just really share a knowledge base or share what's going on in our minds and our hearts and like what we want to make. And the next thing that I'm going to talk about that I've made is the living bridge. So I was really fortunate to work with 2 other lovely women, one Chelsea Booz and one Erin Ross. And, so it's funny because Brandon was talking about Make Something Edmonton, and it kind of grew out at that party because we were at the Make Something Edmonton launch, and you know, there was like the good things that we were feeling from it, but then there was like the things where we're like, well, what is this? Is this like a crowd start? Like we were feeling really confused when we left. But nonetheless, Chelsea, Aaron, and I were like, we can make something. What are we going to make? Like, whatever Make Something Edmonton is like whatever it is. But what can we make? Like, what do we want to do? And we're like, well, like, we want to make cool places in the city. Like, we kind of just came to that consensus. And we're like, gardens are cool. Gardens are pretty. Everyone likes gardens, don't they? So we were looking at places and spaces throughout the city, and Chelsea was commented, well, you know, like the bridge is really cool, and then of course Aaron and I are like, oh my God, it could be like our own High Line or our own like promenade plantee. That could be really cool. But you know, when we started diving deeper, we were thinking, you know, like it's this place that's completely abandoned, but has such an amazing perspective of the city, and we could make something beautiful that's kind of just been left behind. You know, we could make that into that, which is like a huge difference. But you know, like the main aspect of like what I feel like we made was this sense of community, and the fact that we had over 40 volunteers come over 2 days to help us make it is what made the project, you know? And we didn't even know the majority of the people that came, and just that power of that energy of making something as a community was beautifully overwhelming. And like additionally, you know, there was this man who was living on the bridge named Stephen Wolf, and we were really apprehensive to kind of intrude on his home. So we were like, we're leaving notes, and we'd never find him. And then he found out from one of his like street mates that we were doing this. And we came back the next day, and he was like moving his house over, and he was like, I think this is so great what you guys are doing. Yeah, and it was just really interesting. So I'll start with this story of like what kind of the common thread is between all these things, or like what making can do is that Stephen Wolf and his street dad came over right when we were kind of just wrapping up things that day, and he had collected some tobacco, and he came up to us and he said, I want to do like a thanks and a prayer to the Creator with you. And he's like, maybe I'm not supposed to be, maybe I don't have the allowance to do this, but it's something I want to do because I want to thank you for making my home beautiful. And you know, like we were just so taken with emotion. I mean, Chelsea, Aaron, and I like totally started like bawling, and you know, like losing it. And I'm sure part of it was due to like exhaustion, but part of it was just due to like the beauty of like, we initially did it as, you know, a very kind of, we want to make something cool and something pretty, but it ended up being so much more than that. And that's the thing about making, that, you know, that like making is so much more than making. It's like about what can you get out of it. And it's the same thing like out of the workshops. It's like, to me, I love just seeing people kind of like collaborate. Or with the log bowls, it's like taking something that was maybe going to become, you know, sawdust and giving it new life again. That's what I think that's so amazing out of it. So, you know, really this was making me explore like, what is it about making that makes me want to make? Who am I as a maker? Why do I make these things that I make? What inspires me? What is the creative process I value or do before I decide to make something? Or like, what is the common thread? So there's, you know, self-satisfaction. I mean, we're human beings. We can be selfish sometimes. Like, what am I going to get out of this? Was it worthwhile? Am I going to get recognition? Is it cool? And when you stop, you recognize that there's a need or a passion to make something. There's that, you know, that heart flutter, that burning desire that gives you that extra push. It's passion and desire that allows you to make something great. For an example, the Living Bridge received an Urban Design Award last month, and we were talking with this really like lovely and amazing man that works for the city, and he was commenting to us. He's like, "Oh, I can't believe you guys did this, and you're not urban designers." And it really struck me because you know, like you don't have to be a professional at something to do something amazing. You just need to like have that drive or have that collaboration with something to just like do it. You know, and that leads me to like to thinking about like imagine if a park was designed by a kid. Like how cool would that be? Like a kid could probably make the coolest park any of us have ever seen, and it'd be like the funnest thing ever. You know, and then there's like, of course, there's like striving to make things better. But at the same token, like, you know, we all screw things up sometimes, and that's how you learn to make things better. And I'd say that that's something that I learned in design school is prototyping. I mean, you make something, and every time you make it, it's better. And maybe it's about losing an idea, an identity. Maybe it's changing, and the idea is changing, and like what you want to bring to life is changing. And like I think that those victories and those failures can create joy and wonder. And then it's funny because I was trying to think like, well, like who inspires me or what inspires me? And of course there's like some designers or some planners or some authors or like my mom inspires me. But honestly, at some point I just realized that really what inspires me is people and the idea of people and the humanist part of why I make things. Because I'm fascinated by people. I'm fascinated about what drives them. I'm fascinated about what makes them happy. I'm fascinated about what makes them sad. You know, what's their story? Why do they like walking down one street and not the other? Because I know that there's streets in the city that like I'm very drawn to, and there's streets that I'm not as drawn to. Like why is that? You know, why do I pick up one thing at another at the store? Like what draws you to things? So I mean that really influences like my making. And there's also the power of making when it has a social aspect to it, like sharing our successes, seeking input to solve a problem, or like collaborating on an idea, or just plain gathering together to work on projects in a shared space with shared resources. That is richness in making. But making things is among the most satisfying of all activities. Great experiences are full of flow. I'm just gonna switch my page so that I have my notes. You know, making involves like a manipulation of matter, and thus good making is a mastery of self and materials. Making something new that involves pushing your existing skills towards a results in intangible outputs and incredibly rewarding. Ultimately, this is what I think about making. That when you make something, it makes you feel good. You just like completed something. And making something is best done with others because you can kind of share in that. And when you can share the thing with someone, you feel even better. So my passion right now is definitely making in the city. And the reason why is because together we make the city. The city is us and we are the city. We are the makers of the city. We are the collective fabric of a city. Outside the shopping malls and the buildings and the office blocks and the restaurants, there's a common space we all navigate. How we move, how we meet and play in this space shapes us. Additionally, the city is where we are at our best and at times at our worst, but it's always something we are in together. More than just a part of the city, we are also participants in the city. We build it, we break it, we share it, we change it. We are the city. But like, how can we look at the city as a perspective of a child? Maybe it's about having more public spaces. Maybe it's about more public art. Maybe it's about painting the streets as if we're Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Maybe we need our yellow brick road. Or maybe we could just turn one of our empty parking lots into, maybe we could just turn one of, Sir Winston Churchill into those colorful crosswalks around. Or maybe we could turn, just one of our empty parking lots in the corridors into, mini putt over a weekend. That could be fun. Or maybe we could turn the Walterdale Bridge into a market, which it's funny because this is something I had thought about and then someone else thought about it. So I think this could be a really good idea. Maybe there's more of you that have thought about doing this. Instead of tearing it down, it could be like this really cool, promenade that we explore in relation to the river. So, and in the words of Jane Jacobs, I have a few words that she has shared through her books. And like, cities have the capacity of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. There is no logic that can be superimposed on the city. People make it, and it is up to them, not buildings, that we must fit our plans. So my question is, so why don't we work together to make the city? What do you want to make of the city? What can you and I make of the city? So it's interesting because I think when I was thinking about making and everything that we've maybe just explored, it's like maybe making is just doing. The idea is a simple one. Maybe it's just doing. Maybe do your thing, do your passion, the thing that just sits in the back of your head each day, just waiting for you to follow your heart, to give you the tools and the desire to change the things that you care about. Let's inspire each other. That people who do things can inspire the rest of us to go do things. That they can be small do's or big do's or just a plain, amazing, extraordinary do's. And that maybe making things can lead to great things. I'm going to leave it on there. So sometimes you need to romanticize the place that you live or the thing that you want so that you can make it. I definitely don't know it all. I am by no means the best designer, the best urbanist, the best geographer. But I do know that I have passion. I have some great love and some great confusion of people. And I do really like beautiful things and beautiful spaces. So I'm not the best maker, but I believe that making can lead to great things. Thanks, everyone.
Questions, not just questions, but conversation, thoughts, ideas.
I like hugging and talking. See? I'm totally, like, if you know me, or if you know someone that knows me, I love hugging. So Brandon's comment was, like, so true. So does anyone have any questions or any thoughts? Go ahead. I would say there's definitely a couple of things that hold me back from making things. Fear. I mean, like, I'm not going to lie. And I mean, I think that that's just a common element of who we are as people. And that fear of succeeding, or that fear of, it's that fear of succeeding that I would say that definitely holds me back. But additionally, like, time, because there's only so many things that you can do in a week or a day. But at the same token, it's just about prioritizing. And I mean, for an example, with the Living Bridge, we were crazy, and when we decided to make it, we like turned it around in 7 weeks. Like we like literally from the day that we decided that we wanted to make something to it being planted was 7 weeks. And I think that sometimes I don't think we really had the time to think about it. We just did it. So I think that can also be, because that's the thing, is it's really easy to lose momentum. So when you don't have the time to think about it, you just do it. Or it's funny because I cannot remember who this guy is in the States, but I watched this YouTube video. I was at this conference, this workshop, and the guy said, the first thing that you should do is make a website. Because once you make a website, it's like reality. And even if people don't think, like even, what did he say? He said something about that like when it's a website, it's real. And even if you know it's not real, you like have to make it happen because it's out there. So like that was one of the things that Chelsea and Aaron and I did, or like, well, yeah, he made it, yeah, he like just like pretend stuff, and then people just kind of trickled along, and he's like, all right, this is happening. And that's what we did for like the Living Bridge, was like, you know, making the rendering. Like, it's always so funny just to like it's like you almost have to make believe yourself to make yourself do it. Because that fear or that momentum, like either the fear can take over you or the momentum can drop. So that's what I would say. Hello.
No, I think that ties in perfectly to what I was going to say. Like your comment about having that it's important to romanticize the place you live in and that kind of thing. Like I think very often, like being a designer in Edmonton, I feel like I'm in two modes. Sometimes I'm like, oh, there's so much work that needs to be done. This is so depressing. Or I'm like, oh, Edmonton is so great. These little pockets. And I'm just going to pretend that all this other stuff doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like about harnessing, you know, that positive thinking and being like, well, what do I want Edmonton to be?
Yeah.
And not just automatically being like, well, it sucks, so it's not going to happen, you know? So I think we really need to have that, like whatever it is, that make believe, that romanticization of our city, of the spaces, to just be like, okay, this is my vision. And I think like the Living Bridge project is such a perfect example of that, of just being like, okay, we're just going to take that leap of faith and do this beautiful thing. So I think that's just something that I think is a great thing for all, you know, designers and makers to take home in terms of just like, yeah, we should be romanticizing our city more.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and it's funny because I mean, romanticizing the city, I love Edmonton. I went away for grad school, but I came back because I view Edmonton as having like so much possibilities. But you know, like on a morning like today or the last couple of days, like it's hard. Like it's hard to want to live here. But at the same token, it's funny because when you're talking, something came to mind. Like the Atlantic Cities a couple of weeks ago had an article, and it was about winter cities. And there was this rendering. They like talked about the other cities that were in the pictures, but there was this rendering of Edmonton, but there was no reference of Edmonton in the article or in the photograph. But it was like this winter playground, and they were talking about how about if we like bulldozed snow to like make essentially a playground within the city. And it's like that could be something really cool. Like imagine if, you know, there was tobogganing hill in the middle of Stevenson Churchill with all the snow that is out there. Like that could be really cool. So like that's that, and that's like romanticizing, where it's like, okay, we're like in this wintry snowy place and have more than over half the snow than we normally have in a year already. And you know, like what can we do with this? What can we do that's something, and we all love to play, and that's something that I think that's also really important as a designer or a maker, that it's like, how can you bring play back in? Like as adults, we all like to play, but we've kind of forgotten that we all like to play. Well, I know a few fellows back there. You know who I'm pointing at. I know you guys like to play. If you want to see some guys who like to play, like follow Oliver Apartment's Instagram. Trust me, those guys like to play. Anyone else have any discussions? Lisa.
First of all, that was so good. I'm feeling very inspired.
Yay.
So I'm curious, there's a lot of talk in Edmonton right now about this being fertile territory to make things. I'd like to know, when you were living in other places, did you make as much or make differently? Like, what were your experiences like in making in those other places?
Did everyone hear that? So Lisa was talking about fertile, like that Edmonton feels like a fertile place, and that while I was away, I guess how is my making kind of different, or what did I make different? So I'm not gonna lie, I was in grad school in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I didn't really have very much time to make anything, because they literally kind of like kick you on a treadmill at full blast, and you just, my best friend was my laptop, was my best friend. But I think what was really interesting about how it changed me as a maker is just living differently. And again, it goes back to people, like just how people interact with the city and the livability. Like it was really important for me to go away for school, and especially with what I was studying, because for my master's I did in urban geography, and it was really important for me to explore how people live in other places. And I think bringing that back to Edmonton is, I think, you know, there's the things that I loved over there, and there's the things that maybe I didn't love, but I want to take the things that I loved and bring it back to make the city maybe the place that I want to live. And I would say that that's a huge difference additionally for like maybe why Edmonton is having this fertile like kind of ground is because A, we have you know the opportunity to do it, but B, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is something that I say, but you know, I would say a lot of people that are the entrepreneurs in the city have traveled a lot, and they've kind of gotten to taste this and that literally, but also, you know, just like try different things. And I think that that's really what I took from kind of like being away for school or being away living somewhere else. Yeah. Hi.
I want to know what the future holds for you. What ideas are kind of percolating beneath the surface?
Yeah. So what what ideas are percolating for me right now? Well, it's funny because I kind of have two different veins that I'm personally really interested in, and one is definitely kind of follows more along the line of the Living Bridge, or maybe the few examples where I gave you, or like a market on Walterdale Bridge or what have you, where I'm really interested in like livable spaces and making the city a livable place. And, you know, just I want to have more places that I can go to in the city that are like exciting and fun and inspire me. And then additionally, I'm really, really interested in kind of the collaborative and or engagement prospects. So I'm really interested in kind of civic engagement and, you know, shared knowledge bases and like empowerment and like how education can act as an empowerment tool. So I'd say those are like kind of the two veins that I'm really interested in. But at the same token, I know with the Living Bridge, like there's no way I could have done it by myself at all. Like it would have been overwhelming. So I love like meeting people and trying to make things together. So like honestly, if there's anyone in this room that like wants to make something, whether it be, you know, a little object or a big something in the city, like let's hang out. Let's make stuff. Like let's make the city that we want to make, and like let's make things that we want to make. Let's like learn from each other.
Yeah.
Chris has a question.
I just want to know, what do you think, because obviously the Living Bridge was a great idea, but I don't think a lot of people could have done it. What do you think were like your best resources that actually get you over that hump of you've committed to it, made a website, but you still got to fucking do it, right? So
Yeah.
What do you think were the biggest resources you had?
The biggest resources we had, we initially brought it to the Downtown Edmonton League, Community League, and they were like very much, I think just kind of like help give us some direction of who we could talk to about like getting money or like what have you. So I mean, we were beyond fortunate with that project where we had a lot of support. So and then MAID was also a huge catalyst in helping us with everything. And then we went to the Edmonton Community Foundation, and then they talked to the Stollery Foundation, and they financially supported the project. And then we like had these other great organizations like the Edmonton Naturalization Group come out of the woodwork, and then we talked to like Hole's Greenhouse, and you know, like, and it's funny because just when I think you were there on the first day helping plant, were you not? But like it had been pouring the days before we made the Living Bridge, and we were like, we're not going to get the dirt because the road going out to where we were going to get the soil was like washed out. But then one of the other companies that were working with, Classic Landscapes, like ended up just being like, oh, don't worry, we'll bring you truckloads of soil because we can get to our soil. Seven trucks, yeah, like 7 huge dump trucks of soil. But I mean, like, I don't know, like what was, you know, like things went fairly smoothly considering how much time we turned it around in. Like, of course, we were planning on planting, I think, 2 weeks before because apparently we wanted to do it in like 5 weeks. Like turn around in 5 weeks because we're crazy. But honestly, like that project went, like it honestly was kind of a dream project where it went smoother than we could have ever imagined. So it's hard to say like maybe what I would do differently, But I'm sure there'll be a project like that in the future that goes like awry, and I can totally share it with you then, where I'm like, whoa, I would have done this differently and this differently. I don't know, like social media was amazing for that project too, because there's no way we would have had the volunteers that we had if it wasn't for social media. And we totally know that. I don't think that word would have spread on the street in 6 weeks as fast. Yeah, that's what I would say.